Hello, and how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing good. I'm a bit tired, but I'm doing pretty well. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good. Just enjoying the show, and I'm also enjoying this spring-esque uh weather that we got out here in the East Coast. So very,
Yeah.
very happy, very happy.
Yeah. Our weather's been changing constantly here in Texas, and it's been pretty good the past few days. So, you know, I I can't wait till it gets to summertime. I can't stand the cold. Anybody who knows me knows I can't stand the cold. So, but staying warm.
You're not the only one. I am a warm weather person myself. So spring
Yeah, definitely.
and summer cannot get here quick enough.
hmm
Um, let's go ahead and begin. And how did you get started in wrestling? How did it all start off for you?
Well, of course, just like everybody else, of course, I watched it when I was a kid. I started tuning in around like the late '90s, early 2000s, more so early 2000s, like right at 2000. Um, Attitude Era, all that kind of stuff. Like when it was starting to, die off, I guess you can say, lack of a better term. And I kept watching it consistently up until about like after Eddie Guerrero died. I only followed WWE. I didn't really watch WCW. I didn't really watch ECW, even though around that time I really should have, but I didn't. I was a huge just WWE fangirl of WWF at the time too. And then of course like after Eddie Guerrero died, like just the turn of the company and the vibe and the direction they were going, I just kind of started lost interest. And considering that I only had followed WWE, like I kind of started turning more towards music. I picked up the drums around that time, and I got heavily involved in music and kind of like I kind of just didn't really imagine myself ever like getting back into wrestling again. And when I was about 16, 17, I had actually came across I was a sophomore in high school, and I started hanging out with these seniors, and they were wrestling fans, but they followed, like Ring of Honor, and they started going to like indie shows and stuff like that too. It wasn't just WWE. So I started hanging out with them, and they started bringing me around that, and of course we'd go back and watch like old WWE too, like what I was into, and I kind of just I kind of just it was like a rebirth of like this love I had for wrestling again, and I started going to these shows with them. I met a friend of mine, and he's still a really good friend of mine. I met him, and he actually ended up booking a show one year, and was just like, "Hey, I would like for you to valet for so and so, and would you want to do it?" And it was when I started valeting for Lee Fang, and I was just like, you know what, I could. I was like, I want to do this. I want to do this, and that was February 27th, almost 4 years ago, 2010, and I did that one show, and it just started from there. And I was going to every show I can grab a hold of, managing, valeting for Lee Fang, or I actually valeted for Eddie Dalton for a little bit too. And after a while, I started getting in the ring, started training, and it just went on from there. And now I'm here, 4 years later, still doing it, and it took a hold of my life, like out of nowhere too. And it took a hold of my life during a pretty rough time. I was going through like like a relationship fallout and stuff like that, and all other personal stuff, and it gave me something to turn to. And it came to me when I really needed something to turn to, and I couldn't really just ignore that. You know what I mean? So yeah, 4 years later, and I'm here. I'm actually at a wrestling show right now. So but,
That's awesome. With the music, and then you got into wrestling, and I guess what it shows for you is that you are a true student of wrestling in general. I mean, you not just look at what's current, you look at you know was went down back in the day. Maybe
right,
something that you can feed off of, maybe something storytelling, and get into the character and things like that.
right,
So I gotta say, just hearing your stories, just seeing how much passion you have for it, I mean, you are definitely a true student. You someone that wants to learn, that's willing to learn. I mean, people act like that they already knew, but wrestling is like all phases of life. You can always learn something new, even it's something that you may not be aware of.
No, definitely. And I've been having those kind of conversations too with a lot of my peers lately. Oh, hold on, real quick. Sorry, my mom actually just tried calling me, so I had to ignore her call.
No, that's okay.
I knew she was going to do that too. She always calls the best I can. Anyways, I have actually been having a lot of those kind of conversations with some of my peers as of lately, and I just, to me, I will never, I don't think I'll ever get too prideful or just too good or too experienced to ever, think, oh, well, I need to stop learning. I'm where I need to be. I don't need to ask questions anymore. I don't need to go to training anymore. I don't need to, even little things like that isn't necessarily learning, but will get you like respect, like, tearing down and setting up the ring. If I see a ring that's being set up and they need help, I'll totally go and help them after shows. If unless if I'm like with somebody who needs to get out and like needs to leave and I have to ride with them, I'll stay around and clean up and like bump shoulders with people and talk and hang out. Like I don't think I'll ever be. I'm always very humble, and I don't think I'd ever be too good to do anything like that. And I don't know, that's something that I see some people lack, which I'm in no position to like critique or like see that somebody's doing something wrong. But it's just a personal pet peeve of mine that's not just within wrestling, but with any aspect of like even with like my shoot job or anything like that. Like I just don't think that there's a stop. There's like a limit to how much you can learn with anything. And like I said, I've been talking about that with a lot of my peers lately. So it's really interesting that you brought that up. But no, I definitely like watched. I was living in Austin for about 8 or so months. I was working for Anarchy Championship Wrestling for a while. Um, around that time, I lived with a couple roommates, and they had like a huge like plethora of like all the like WWE and WWF Raws from like the very beginning. Like early '90s and all the way up until like as of lately. And it's kind of a disadvantage for me because haven't been able to keep. Well, it's not that I haven't been able to, is I haven't really wanted to keep up with like WWE or anything like that lately. And I feel it's a disadvantage, especially because that is the biggest, company in the industry. But I definitely was watching back, like, late 90s, like, all the time, because it was what I was drawn to. It's what I'm personally still drawn to, as far as personality and persona and energy, when it comes to, like, what I like to see in wrestling. And I definitely still go back and watch that, or, I'll go to shows myself, or I'll hang out with friends, and watch, like, some Ring of Honor or whatever it is that we put on, some Japanese. I definitely, still go back and watch wrestling. It's hard for me to watch WWE nowadays. I haven't watched Raw in a long time, to be honest with you, but maybe one day I'll try to tune in and try to keep up.
You mentioned Japanese, and your name sounds Japanese esque. If maybe I'm just assuming, but
No, it is.
oh, okay. Well, that being
Yeah.
that being said, what made you decide to call yourself that? Was it a promoter's idea? Was it yours idea? Like that makes it so interesting as how wrestlers come up with the names that they come up with.
My mom chose that name because that's my real name. Machiko is my real name. My mother is from Okinawa, Japan, so I'm actually part Japanese. It's why I have that Texas tattoo I have. It has the rising sun because like I grew up with my mom and with my grandparents, and my grandmother's full-blooded Japanese. My mom is half. She was born and raised in Okinawa. She moved over to the States when she was about 20, and her primary language is Japanese. She didn't know English when she moved to the States. And I grew up with a lot of, even though I grew up in Texas, I was born and raised in Texas, I've never been to Japan. I grew up with a lot of Japanese values, and I wanted to pay homage to that by putting the rising sun in the Texas, because even though Texas is my home state, it is my home, it's my roots. My main roots is, of course, in Japan. And And I decided to throw shoujo in front of Machiko because that means lady in Japanese. So, my name in English would be Lady Machiko. And that's the thing with Japan. That's actually one of my biggest goals in wrestling. That is my biggest goal in wrestling is to go wrestle in Japan. I could wrestle WWE, which I would love to. Don't get me wrong. I would love to wrestle WWE. I could wrestle TNA, Ring of Honor, anywhere else. But if I don't wrestle in Japan, like I just feel like I haven't done what I wanted to do. Like that's my main goal. And mainly because like A, I want to travel. Like that's my biggest goal in life. Really, is to travel. And B, like I want to do what I love doing back where my roots came from. Maybe I could take my mom with me. She'd love to go back and see her home, but yeah, that's where my name came from. I didn't choose it. I tried to stick with it as far as wrestling goes, but I didn't necessarily really choose it.
I will say, well said. I mean, that's parents. I mean, they come up with names. They sometimes they may name you after your grandparents or great grandparents, or they may just name you out of celebrity names. I mean, who knows? But it's a very cool name, and I like the culture of Japanese wrestling in general. Just the culture, just the appreciation from the fan base the how much they appreciate the hard work that the male and female wrestlers do, and just it's very mesmerizing, and just it's just something that makes you appreciate even more if you're a wrestling fan. It's just I guess that's my only way to describe Japanese wrestling. It's mesmerizing. It's just you forget about storylines and you focus on
Right.
the true aspect that is wrestling itself.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like that's the thing that I noticed about Japanese. That I really appreciate about it the most is that mainly, even with indie shows in America, it's not just WWE. You'll have indie shows that'll have like their comedic matches and stuff like that, which isn't bad. Don't get me wrong. Like there's a there's people in Texas wrestling that I've seen do like the comedic matches or the really gimmicky characters that I like am in love with, like Jojo Bravo. Him being the sumo wrestler god was just like this emperor is awesome. So don't get me wrong, I can dig that. In America, a lot of, like especially with WWE, I feel they focus like on the entertainment aspect. Whereas what I really like about Japanese is that they focus on the arts. And me, you know, saying that I'm an artist not only as a wrestler, but like I said, I have turned to music. I do play the drums. I really appreciate the art aspect of wrestling. That's what draws me to it the most. And I feel like that's what Japan is more than anything. That's what the Japanese style of wrestling is the art. It emphasizes on the art of wrestling, and you know, whereas like a lot of like wrestling in America really focuses on the entertainment part. So
I definitely understand where you're coming from, and I do agree with you in this regard that if Japanese wrestling focus on just the wrestling itself. Like you want to see a great solid match. You want to enjoy what goes down inside the ring. Sure, you can deal with the promos and the interviews, things like that, but people pay their hard-earned money to see the best wrestlers that they can possibly see, whether it's locally, whether it's all over the world. They pay to see
uh,
people fight. They pay to compete. So I guess you know there's so much that maybe WWE could do better or any other company could do better. But if they really want to focus on the aspect that is wrestling, definitely take a look at Japanese wrestling because it's fun stuff. It's a lot of fun stuff.
uh,
You live in the state of Texas, as you point out. There's a
yes,
lot of history in the Lone Star State. A lot of legends and Hall of Famers
right.
come from there, such as the Guerreros, the Funks, the Von Erichs, the Steve Austin, Shawn Michaels.
Love Steve Austin
I
and Shawn
mean,
Michaels.
and then on the female side, you got people like yourself, Athena. Barbie Hayden, who's the NWA Women's Champion. I
Right.
mean, Rachel Summerlin, who I believe is retired. Jessica James. I mean, Texas wrestling has definitely become a staple of our wrestling. And how do you feel to be a part of a state with all the legends and all the big names that they have, from the males to the females, from the indies, from the pros? Like, how do you feel about Texas wrestling in general?
I feel really honored, honestly. Um, Especially because I'm still new to the industry. I'm still new to the business. Like, I feel very honored, very lucky, and I feel that there's a lot of opportunity for me, which I guess goes hand in hand with feeling lucky. So, especially with me, because it's really, when people ask me, like, who's your trainer, it's really hard for me to, like, pinpoint who exactly has trained me. Well, I can pinpoint who exactly has trained me, but it's not just one person. Like, I've trained in several rings with several people. The first person who brought me in the ring whenever Victory Crown Championship Wrestling was running in DFW was JT Lamont. He was the first person, you know, to teach me the ropes to set up, trade on the ring. Like, I was doing all that kind of stuff with Victory Crown, and he was the first person to bring me in the ring and have me, do bumps and all that. And I trained with him for like maybe five or so times. It could be overcounting or undercounting. Um, he brought me into the ring for the first 4 or 5 times, and it's kind of taken me under his wing ever since. I can go to him with any questions. Um, he's retired as of now too, so he kind of like stays out of the ring a bit. But he actually was the one who also brought me down to ACW, which I felt was like my next step as far as training goes. Um, ACW, I trained with Darren Child and Rachel Summerlin the most, of course, them being the owners of the company. But it also gave me the opportunity to train with so many other people, because you do have people like Athena and Jessica James and Barbie Hayden. Not saying that I've trained a lot with those girls, but I was also able to train with like, Robert Evans like a couple times, and with Portia Perez, JoJo Bravo. I had it was great too. Like, one of the things I do remember was being able to roll around the ring with John Jameson right after he had came back from being in Canada for 3 months, because he went there for Lance Storm's academy. And so, like, I got him fresh out of that, and he even started telling me stuff like that Lance Storm was telling him. So it was like secondhand training from, a place like Lance Storm's academy. It was even great doing that. Like ACW brought in people from out of state, sometimes out of country. I got to roll around the ring with them. And so that was a really good experience, too. And right now, where I'm training at Metroplex Wrestling in MPX, and we have a lot of people coming in there and train too. But as of lately, Athena's been training there a lot. You have Matthew Palmer; he's been training there a lot. Same with Franco D'Angelo. Now that he's back in the ring, he's been training there a lot too. And so I've been able to learn from them. Same with Andy Dalton; he's been going there a lot too, training. So it's just like I've gotten in a ring with pretty much anybody and everybody, and I feel like that's what I like the most about being in Texas with Texas wrestling, because it gives opportunity. It's really hard to fail at becoming a wrestler when you have so much around you to learn from in this state. So I feel very honored being here, honestly. Not that I really had a choice, because I was born and raised here, but you know what I mean. Like, I just feel very honored to be able to train with these people and be part of that history, I guess you can say. A little part, but a part of it.
I definitely have to agree. That's always going to be someone to lean on. Whether it's Indy, whether it's pro. I mean, it's just Texas. I mean, it's a big deal in the wrestling industry. You make it there. Maybe I'll use this in a New York City saying: if you can make it in Texas in the wrestling industry, you could pretty much make it anywhere. And from the big names and from the up and comers, they shown that it's possible. It's possible to expand yourself, to become a household name, especially when you come from the state of Texas. So that's definitely amazing at itself. Um, so do you have any upcoming shows, events that you would like to promote that you have coming up?
I'm actually not going to be wrestling tomorrow, but considering MPX has been, you know, pretty much, I guess you can say, like a home promotion I've been looking for lately and training with. MPX is having a show tomorrow. It's one of the biggest shows of the year. It's MPX Consequences. It's a really nice lineup we actually have going. Lance Hoyt, we're bringing him back, which is great. We actually had him just like a couple months ago. And, I mean, the card is like super stacked. And as of lately, we've been having some pretty intense matches at MPX. Like, we have like a taped fist match with Stephen Kirby and Kyle Fisher. It's a huge grudge match going on. We also have like a last man standing match with Matthew Palmer himself, and Gregory James, which Gregory James has been like taking on Texas like a storm. He actually went to Connecticut too recently. He's definitely one of the bigger up and comers in Texas, and he's a good friend of mine too. He's actually really cool. But that match has been built up too for the past few months. This is like the fourth Consequences show, I believe, that MPX is having. It's going to be tomorrow at their, usual location. It's at Metroflex Mid-Cities Gym in Bedford. There's a couple Metroflex locations. It's the one in Bedford. It's off Industrial 183. It's actually on Reliance Parkway, but it's like right next to Industrial. You take that exit. Starts at 8 o'clock. The doors, or actually it starts at 7:45. They just changed that recently. Doors open at 7:30. $8 to get in. The past few shows we've had has been standing room only. So I believe you get like a discount to like $6 a ticket if you bring your own seat, which I would highly suggest. And, we have a full merch table. Franco D'Angelo has his gear up there that everybody's been picking out lately. Matthew Palmer actually has shirts for the first time, apparently. And he's going to have them there. And, yeah, I mean, it's a really cool show. It's like BYOB, too. So if you like to have a couple brews when you watch wrestling, like, you can do that. And the crowd is amazing there. Like, I love the MPX crowd. Aside from MPX, I picked, I had a match last month at NWA Texoma, which is actually where I'm at right now, but I'm not on the card tonight, but I will be next month. I believe I will be next month. But it's also a really good show, too. It's been picking up, and the crowd is amazing here, too. Definitely another Texas show you should check out. Aside from that, I went down to Austin for Inspire last Sunday, and that show is hands down like one of the best shows I've been to. Honestly, it's a really good promotion there, and which was nice too because it made me feel a little bit more at home because I had been with ACW for the past 2 years, and it was nice to be able to go down and enjoy some wrestling again in Austin. So, if anything, that's where you're going to be seeing me at those shows, and I plan to try to get out of the state too, try to get to Louisiana, and Oklahoma within the next few months. So, but every wrestling show I'm a part of or anything I'm really doing, I keep it all up on Facebook. So I'm going to work on getting my own website domain soon. I'll post that on my Facebook as well. But yeah, that, and on Twitter, my Twitter handle is gspotmuch. I don't know if I'm going to change it or not. I really like it. And I also have an Instagram account too, but you just see nothing but flex photos and protein shakes on there, or my cat. But yeah, I mean, those are where I'm going to be in the near future. And as far as anything else, I'll definitely keep everybody up to date on the internet. So I'm pretty good at that.
You pretty much answered my next question. The social media links. Go follow
I
her
talk
on
too much,
Twitter.
I know.
No, it's all you're good. You're good. I enjoy chatting with you and just listening. Hey, I'm a good listener, so it's all good. You're good. You're good. This is one of those shows that you get the floor. You can speak as much as you want, as you want, as long as you want. You're good. That there's no gonna be no interruptions for me, so you're good. Um, my last question it for you is if you can have a dream match against any wrestler. It could be someone from the indies or someone from the pros. But if you could ever have that dream match, who would your opponent be?
Oh man, there's several. And first one that came to mind, honestly, that the first person that came to mind, that I would say as far as like on a huge level, is Lita. Honestly, um, she was definitely one of my favorites. You know, her and Trish Stratus, especially. You know, I've been watching the time period I was watching WWE and like early 2000s and whatnot. Lita and Trish Stratus, of course, like my favorites. I loved watching them. They definitely took a huge toll for, or not a huge toll, but it definitely inspired me. They took a big part, like as far as inspiration goes to wrestle. Um, Lita would probably be somebody I'd love to be in the ring with. I don't know if I'd want to wrestle her more or like tag with her. Honestly, like I don't know which I'd want more, but I would say her not only because she was somebody I really enjoyed growing up and watching, but as far as like my style and what I've heard from more people than I can count on one hand. As what people would say my style is like. A lot of people say like I remind them of her, and I don't do it intentionally. I think it's just because like my personality and my natural style, like even outside of wrestling, is a bit more like freelance and relaxed. Um, I would really like to get in the ring with her. That'd be great. But on a Texas more indie level, Rachel Summerlin being one of the first females to actually like bring me in the ring. If she ever decides to come back and wrestle, like I would love to wrestle her. To be honest with you, um, JT Lamont is also somebody I'd really like to wrestle too. Considering he's one of the first people who brought me in the ring, I would really like to wrestle him. Outside of people who've like consistently trained me, I mentioned them earlier. Like I want to wrestle Jojo Bravo. Like I really do. I just think it'd be a really fun match, and hopefully he hears this, and somebody can make that happen. That'd be great.
I'm sure he'll be listening. Once I get this link posted and everything, and